While he was in the Assembly, first in 2005 and then in 2007, Mark authored 2 marriage equality bills, which were the first measures to pass a state legislative body anywhere in the country.
My name is Mark Leno, third year as a teaching elder. And the more I get into it, I just had my 73rd birthday. I embrace that age. Yeah, the second half of my first year at the University of Colorado, there's something called the Vietnam War going on. And I knew there was not a chance I could go on to war because that's not within me. But the honest thing to do is what I did, which was applied for something called conscientious objector status. And so this arduous process, I had to get letters of recommendation from my rabbi and from my parents, from family members, from community leaders, everybody and anybody I could think of who could say, Mark Leno is who he is telling you he is. So in the midst of this process, I came out to my parents. And this is what Mercedes is referring to, right? Long answer, short question. And my father, bless his heart, had no context for what I was telling him. So he took me out of the room and took me to a bedroom. We closed the door, and he knew he had to say something to me. And what he said was that, what I remember, was that if all of these people in the community, rabbi, friends, relatives, knew what I had just told my parents about my being gay, did I think they would still stand by their letters attesting to my moral character? And as Mercedes and George, Poya, and Logan know, I'm not patting 18-year-old Mark Leno on the back, but I am patting all 18-year-olds and youth who know who they are on the back, because my response, spontaneous response to my father's question was, if that fact would change their opinion of me so, I don't want their letters. Where did that come from? Every voice that I heard from clergy, from educators, my teachers, from the entire culture was, you're wrong. You can't be gay and a part of this community. And yet, that 18-year-old kid knew I was right, you were all wrong. And that's pretty amazing.
To answer your question, I knew exactly one person, an attorney in San Francisco, who very friendly way said, if you ever get to San Francisco, be sure to give me a call. So it was his sofa on which I crashed when I first arrived. I didn't know anybody else, exactly one person. And 2 weeks later, I had an apartment in the Tenderloin. So as you know, I think you know, I met my partner, Doug Jackson. In May of 1980, he came into my sign company and ordered some signs. He came in, we conducted our business, he gave me his business card, he turned around and walked out. And I thought, wow, I want to see him again. And then I courted him through that summer, and he moved in November of that year. And within a few years, probably around 82, 83, there were flyers posted in the pharmacy about the gay cancer. And it killed people very quickly. There was just absolutely no treatment for it. And there was, of course, the other frightful thing for the first couple of years was we didn't know what caused it. And the community very magnificently came together to create local community-based service organizations, raise the money to sustain these organizations, and provide services. One of them was already around. It's called Shanti. Shanti is still around today. And my partner, Doug, was inspired to take their training. You could take a couple weeks course to learn how to become an emotional support counselor. So you would go to someone who was sick, sit by their bedside, be emotional support, be there for them, to talk to them, listen to them, befriend them, and do that as a volunteer. I got involved with a group called Mobilization Against AIDS. It was the first board of directors that I joined, and it addressed the need of advocacy for our community politically. That was Mobilization Against AIDS. We had dance parties that raised money, and we had walks and 5K runs that raised money for our efforts. Doug and I realized we needed to get tested. There was now a test. We needed to know if we were positive or not. Doug tested positive, I tested negative. And so that was further earth-shattering because there was no treatment. And not to get overly dramatic about it, but looking back, I can't imagine what it was like for Doug after his 23-year-old brother had already died, to tell his parents that he was HIV positive. And then June 14th of 1990, he died of liver failure. So every year in the legislature, my Republican colleagues in February, the month of Reagan's birthday, would introduce a resolution commending Ronald Reagan for his great public service and leadership in the state of California. But in my last years in the Senate, I thought, why am I doing this? Enough. The guy was no good. So I rose and said the following to my colleagues in the state Senate. This resolution praises Ronald Reagan for, quote, advancing the public good.
Though the AIDS crisis began in 1981, President Ronald Reagan refused to even publicly recognize the fact of the epidemic until September 17, 1985. Since 1981, over 36 million people worldwide have died of AIDS. Now, I have to ask myself, why? Why would a U.S. president remain silent for 4 years while tens of thousands of innocent Americans were dying from a virus? This is not my definition of advancing the public good. I cannot support this resolution today.
And as I say, enough of my colleagues joined me that it almost didn't pass. We haven't talked much about my legislative work. So the one piece of legislation I wanted to make mention of goes back to 1999. Terrence Hallinan had, as a supervisor around 1992-93, held hearings at the Human Rights Commission to hear of the challenges facing San Francisco's transgender community. And so what we did was introduce a first of its kind piece of local legislation, a local ordinance, to provide equal access to the county health plan for our, at the time, 17 transgender employees. 17 out of about 30,000. And there were exclusions banning any coverage for anything transgender related. And that's what we set out to change, get rid of those exclusions. So it wasn't long before I got a call from Fox News, and I said, well, Bill, let me explain. If you're a non-transgender employee of the city and county of San Francisco, and you're in need of psychiatric treatment or hormonal treatment or a mastectomy or a hysterectomy, county health plan pays for all of it. But if you're a transgender employee in need of the identical medical care, county health plan won't pay for any of it. And Bill O'Reilly responded to me, Supervisor, you make a compelling argument. I thought, well, can't get much better than that. And we got it passed.
And she says, thank you much, King, says I, in a mannerly way. All I want is Henry Higgins Ed. And the next line is, next week, on the 20th of May, I declare Eliza Doolittle Day. So that's the day that Doug walked into my shop and that we first met. So Henry Higgins Day.